fellow Americans.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves, of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press, what is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think you should be the one to be able to decide when to pull the trigger?
No, sir.
Isn't that what this is about? If you adopt the position that any time you are denied, your particular, there's 4 groups out there, and inspectors, you're the group you headed, anytime you are denied, that ipso facto requires the United States and the Security Council to act on what they said they would do, which is to use whatever means necessary to take on Saddam Hussein so you can get into that particular facility. Is that not correct? Is that not your position?
Mr. Senator, I have a job to do, or I had a job to do, and that was to disarm Iraq in accordance with the provisions of relevant resolutions.
With all due respect, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm trying to get this as clear as I can. I really mean this now. You have an absolute logic. You put together a very tight syllogism here. You have indicated that your job is to disarm. The only way you can disarm is to have access. The only way you can have access is either with permission on the part of Iraq, or if denied, forced access, right?
Compelled access.
Compel. Well, okay, compel. You sound like the lawyer and I sound like the military guy. I mean, compelled, where I come from, when my old man said you're compelled, it meant I was forced. I mean, it was a real simple proposition. It wasn't much to debate. Now, there is a clear logic to that. And that's what I mean when I say I respect your position. But that means that whenever you choose a target that warrants inspection and you are denied, that ipso facto, at that moment, the only way your position can be satisfied or sustained is if the UN Security Council or the United States, acting unilaterally, uses force to guarantee access. Is not that true?
Yes, sir.
Now, that means that you get to choose the time and place when we would use force, if we use force.
No, sir.
Of course you do. If you choose the site and it's denied.
And we coordinate with the member states to include the United States.
Exactly.
And prior to us going in, we have their agreement that this indeed is an inspection worth doing.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
That I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've
still
already
in
done.
Parliament...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we're still waiting for.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans, right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get NIH, one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among animals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
And let's Dr. Fauci.
I have to, well, now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well, wait a minute.
It didn't come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
It
no
is
one is
molecularly.
Those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
not. You can't get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible to result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic. We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
admit the truth.
And you implying...
Senator Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Hey everybody, welcome into Redacted on this Tuesday. Nice to see all of you. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, we seek the truth wherever it takes us, covering the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. We are not run by billionaires. We are self-funded. So thank you for your support and subscribing to the show, the podcast, whatever. We do have an audio version of the show as well. So thank you. And smashing that like button right now really helps to push us further out into the algorithm. So thank you for your support. We do have a very busy show for you on this Tuesday. We're going to look at the mandate battle because, well, we're hearing oral arguments. This is a crazy week on COVID. So the Biden administration is doubling down on its effort to put us further into mandates, mask mandates and vaccine mandates and annual vaccines as well. So there's a whole lot of craziness happening both at the FDA level and in court battles today from the Biden administration.
Plus, we're going to look at the replacement for Dr. Fauci. Now, those of you who got excited about him leaving may want to reserve that excitement because the guy coming in behind him, it's like, could be celebrating the Wicked Witch of the East, and then you get the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, so we'll and this is still kind of up in the air whether or not he's going to be the guy or not. He says maybe not. Well, anyway, nevertheless, we're going to look at Fauci's possible replacement.
Plus, we're going to take a look at Mexico. The United States is saying we don't like those new agriculture laws. They are going to hurt us. We're going to tell you how Mexico is pushing back against the United States.
Oh, and by the way, U.S. schools are in some deep trouble because, the stuff that they're pushing on children in U.S. schools is leading a lot of people to say, hey, I'm going to either send them to private school or I'm going to homeschool these kids because we just can't take it. People are leaving cities, moving out. We're going to look at the U.S. school problem on tonight's show. We're also going to talk about Iran and mounting pressure from Western leaders in Western countries pushing an enormous amount of propaganda to try to topple the Iranian government. We're going to look at that with a deep dive, and we have a guest on the show with that subject. So we've got a very busy Tuesday for you. Grab your cup of coffee, grab your glass of wine, wherever the heck you are around the world, and Redacted starts right now. Raise your hand if they found classified documents in your house today, because my God, the list of people with classified documents keeps growing. Now, my former Vice President Mike Pence has classified documents in his house.
Do you think it's just like one of those things where you find a Picasso behind your wall and you're like, how'd that get there? That's lucky.
Or are they just receiving so many classified documents? They're like, it gets mixed in with kids' art projects.
In which case, why write laws like that, right? What's the point?
Well, that's the point. It's ridiculous.
Again, as someone who volunteers in the school library, the Dewey Decimal System works really well if you want to keep track of things and you know who's checked out something and when it's coming back. Maybe they need our school librarian to go and run down those documents.
Yeah, the Dewey Decimal
Maybe
System.
they need to just stop calling them that because obviously they're not classified. I thought there was a process. You have to check it out. You have to sign it out. But if that's not happening, then let's just call them documents.
Yeah.
They're just paper.
At this point.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's very confusing.
So, we've got a very busy show for you on this Tuesday. Welcome, welcome, welcome. A little bit later in the show, we'll be heading over to Rumble and doing some exclusive content over there. She is not my sister. Raisinette says, I didn't know Clayton has a sister. She is not. That's my wife.
We're not related.
That's my wife.
Although they say, as people are married for longer, they just start to look like one another.
Well, lucky for you.
That may be the case. I guess. We're a foot apart. No one usually thinks that we're siblings.
I did the other day as I was walking the dog. I saw a guy who looked like a total hippie, with like full hair down and like he hadn't shaved and like he'd clearly been sleeping on the beach or something. And his dog looked exactly like him, like full like musty hair, like down. I was like, "That's your dog." Like I know whose dog that is. That belongs to you. Hippie Sam over there. That was him. Hey, we have a daily newsletter that we write. Husband and wife team, Morris Invest. Sorry, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Redacted.inc.
You just had a memory lapse.
I just had a stroke, I think. I have like random URLs in my head. Amazon.com.
Did you swallow your gum?
DrudgeReport.com. No, it's redacted.inc is our website, and it's not .com, it's .inc. All you need to do is go there, put in your email address, and then you'll receive a welcome email. You need to verify that email. and then let them know that you'd like to receive our newsletter tomorrow morning. And like I said, the kids love it. It's the best newsletter in the world because it's funny and it'll get you informed first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee. You can read it in about 5 or 10 minutes. We give you some market updates. You can see here, give you some updates on what's happened in the gold markets. We give you some of the top stories of the day, and we write all of it. We try to write it with our own what's the best way to non-partisan, non-censored, uncensored. We try to, we don't pull any punches.
No, but we try and sort of leave things open-ended. I want to keep you guessing because sometimes the story is so outrageous and I just sort of leave it as like, here's the story, hoping that you'll want to join us to talk about it here so that we can maybe, draw it out a little bit more. And if I think it's outrageous, we might say why here. But I feel like in that format, since it's not a conversation between you and me or anybody else, I'm just sending it to your inbox. I feel like I should not draw conclusions too much. So it's like you draw your own conclusions and then bring them here. And you're free to share them with us in the chat.
That's right. So redacted.inc is the place to go. All right, let's get to the news, shall we? So we've got a busy show for you on this Tuesday. Let's talk about the mandate battle. Well, the Biden administration is once again pushing for COVID mandates on the population, while at the same time pushing for annual vaccines for COVID-19. We'll get there in a second. First, on the masking front, though, I'm going to show you in a minute just how mask mandates are likely coming back, thanks to some legal loopholes that has some lawyers pretty nervous about it that could actually bring mask mandates back. But remember when this happened? Watch.
April 18th, the Biden administration announced that the Transportation Security Administration will no longer enforce the federal mandate requiring masks in all U.S. airports and onboard aircraft.
Yeah, we were on the air that day when that happened, right? Everyone, finally, and everyone's clapping about it, removing their masks. That was April. It's hard to believe. That was April of 2022. Hard to believe less than a year ago. A federal judge in Florida ruled that the CDC had overstepped its authority by requiring airlines to mandate masks on domestic flights. Just about every company then across the United States immediately moved to make masks optional in the workplace. You want to do it? Go ahead. You can do it. And we saw that at businesses. We see that at, fast food places and pharmacies and other people. It was their decision then. You want to do it? You do it. It's your body. You can do what you want. Many of these airlines even allowed passengers in flight during that day to remove the masks, and they had mass celebrations about it. Like this singing flight attendant who was carrying around a bag, letting people dump their masks in it while singing. Watch. Think they're happy?
Yeah. I mean, imagine their life was so miserable making people wear masks that did not want to. I feel so sorry for them. Whether or not, there are so many people who were posting online like, I'm offended by this because I want to still wear a mask and be safe. Which, you're free to feel that way. But it completely lacks empathy for what they went through.
Well, there was people that day. We were covering that day on the show. Remember, David? Like, it was like, oh, wait a second. So now you get to ruin my life because you're not going to wear a mask. Like, maybe you don't understand how this all works.
Yeah.
Me wearing a mask has nothing to do with you, right?
Well, and during that whole thing, too, they understand they still had to wear their masks no matter what, the flight attendants.
Yes.
Right.
They couldn't take them off for any reason.
So the Biden administration is now fighting this. We knew that they fought it from the very beginning, and now they, of course, are facing the appeals process that unfolded today in a court of appeals. They want masks back on your faces. And after the Florida ruling, the Justice Department went nuclear. They were pissed. A number of Biden administration officials were like, that was wrong. They should not have done that. We're going to take this further. Merrick Garland's Justice Department went after them. So they filed an appeal to overturn that ruling. And today was the day. Today is the day. The Biden administration today is in court pushing for a return of mask mandates, COVID mask mandates. We don't know how this appeal will go, but it's clear that the DOJ wants to accomplish this, what they want to accomplish. They are worried that the CDC, here's the thing, right? In the future, they're worried that the CDC won't be able to impose mandates or lockdowns or any other draconian measures. So they don't necessarily care about the masks so much as right now, as it's a precedent for what they won't be able to accomplish in the future if this judge has now struck down this decision. Right. So now the oral arguments from Merrick Garland's DOJ happening now. Here's what they think about it. Here's what we know they think about it. I'm quoting. Here's from the DOJ. You can imagine the next pandemic. There was an outbreak of measles or SARS, and the CDC would want and need to take swift action in order to control such a pandemic in the future. This is the attorney for the Justice Department said. I think the important thing here is that the potential collateral estoppel effect of the district court's ruling could tie up future CDC actions. So again, it's not about this action. It's about future actions. And that's where the legal problem could arise. Of course, this is insanity. As Zero Hedge points out today, it's extremely concerning that the Justice Department apparently believes that masks on planes would be able to control such a pandemic in the first place, especially measles, which is one of the arguments they're using. It's equally concerning, they say, that the CDC is competent enough to control such a pandemic.
Right.
Right? I mean,
given their grade on the last one,
right,
would not be a passing grade.
Such a great track record. So we need to make sure that they have these things in place to control the next pandemic because you did such a great job the last time.
I guess they all should have just consulted the Amish.
Yeah, that would have been a better job, right? It went through their community and no one died, and they went to church. They shared wine out of the same glass at church, and people got sick. They cared for the elderly. They were all together, and it moved through their population, and they're fine. They utterly failed to control this one with masks as well, and on public transportation specifically, on top of their recommendations that politicians enact some of the most draconian restrictions on normal life ever enacted in the United States. But their lockdowns, their masking, their vaccine passports, and all of the other crap, all of their other recommended policies were entirely unable to prevent the spread of a highly respiratory virus.
And can we credit masks for holding back COVID? Meaning,
it could have run its course were it not for masks.
Well, I see that you have some data here to show us that since mask mandates ended, we have not had a surge in infections.
Right. However, if you look at this chart, if you think about it, first, look at that chart. Look at that big spike. That's during mask mandates.
Very well.
So look at that big spike. Think about this for a second. Keep this up here. In the nearly 9 months since the policy ended, cases in the United States have remained low. The winter of 2021 to 2022 saw a massive surge of infections with the mandate in place. No such surge materialized through the end of 2022. Look at it down.
Although you can see that initial peak that's just after mask mandates ended, the media used to say, oh, we'll see, we got rid of masks and it's coming back. But then it just, made another dip. So that didn't hold water.
So thankfully, a lawyer defending the end of the mandates have pointed out the obvious, that this has nothing to do at all with public health. He explained that the appeal's timing shows how little connection it actually bears to America's health and the overall well-being of the population. In fact, he says, quote, "This appeal is not about an urgent matter of public health. If the mask order had been such an urgent matter of public health, you would have expected the CDC to have applied for a stay to the district court's ruling," said the attorney representing the Health Freedom Defense Fund.
Yes, good point.
Right? You would have asked for a stay. You didn't. Instead, you're just playing this out politically.
No, they're just saying, please reserve this power to have done this, even though, there's nothing there that shows that you did a good job with this power.
Yeah. I think more telling, though, and where the lawyers are actually getting nervous, and this is where I'm getting nervous, because when you have really smart lawyers who are saying, here's the troubling problem with all of this and why the government will likely win this appeal. Here's why. The U.S. Justice Department is going to argue to bring back the masks and mandate abilities. Lawyer Janine Yonas has a great thread on Twitter, shows us exactly. We've been actually inviting her to come on the show. Janine says, yesterday, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments in the federal mask mandate case. If you care about this issue, I urge you to read the following from my older and wiser legal colleague who almost always predicts accurately. It contains some good and bad news. So the sort of the summing up of this is the court is likely going to find that the mandate was issued in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act because notice and comment was not followed. Probably the court will not touch the larger question of whether the CDC has the authority to touch such a mandate or issue such a mandate. That will allow the court to prevent reissuance of a mandate at a time it's bound to be extremely unpopular. while not preventing future presidents from imposing similar mandates in the future. It will also prevent the case from reaching the Supreme Court, since SCOTUS will almost certainly not grant certification to hear a notice and comment case. If my colleague is right, the good news is that this means it's highly unlikely the federal mask mandate will return imminently. But then the larger point is that it could come back, not on this particular case.
But it will leave the door open for future mandates.
Exactly. So the bad news is that such a decision won't prevent a future mask mandate on public transit in an emergency, at least until a higher court explicitly rejects the president's authority to use CDC to mandate masks on transit. So they don't want to resolve scientific cases and debates, no matter how obvious it is to me and the most of my colleagues and followers that masks do not mitigate the spread of respiratory viruses, so long as the CDC keeps putting out garbage studies saying that they do. So in the end, this is about future ability of the CDC and presidents of the United States to issue draconian things. And we already know, we're already hearing from Pfizer, already hearing from other members of the government that, oh, it's coming. Like we already know that the next step in COVID or the next pandemic is already coming. So we're already putting in place measures at the World Health Organization level to supersede governments anyway, to do it whether you want to or not.
It's slightly chilling, though, that the Justice Department is using measles as an example.
Right.
I hope that that's not clairvoyant, and in which case the mask would be less important as what, right? Would prevent measles, entire body condoms or something?
I don't know. It's so crazy, though. Why are they fighting for this? Are they just embarrassed and they're pushing for this? Or they really are doing this as like a statement to say any future CDC or later if this president wants to push for more
Well,
lockdowns?
what government is going to allow a court to tell them that they'd had an inappropriate power grab? They have to maintain face in order to continue to justify that power grab.
Right. And this is a Florida judge after all, but we'll see. So we'll be watching these oral arguments. But there's something else big that's happening this week on the COVID vaccine front. The FDA is getting ready to push annual COVID vaccines. Just like the flu, here's how NPR put the story. The FDA considers a major shift in the nation's COVID vaccine strategy. So this is all happening on Thursday at their big meeting. The Food and Drug Administration is considering a major shift in the nation's COVID-19 vaccine strategy, they say. They say the goal is to simplify vaccination against COVID and perhaps adopt an approach similar to what's used for the flu vaccine, with annual updates to match whatever strain of the virus is circulating. This is according to a federal official who spoke under the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. Well, we don't need NPR and your lack of named sources. The CEO of Pfizer told us this was going to happen. This is Albert Bourla. He said this was going to happen. It was going to act just like the flu shot, and they're going to make billions of dollars off of it. He already told us this. You don't need your anonymous sources, NPR. Watch.
Because the virus is spread all over the world, that we will continue seeing new variants that are coming out, and also we will have vaccines that they will last at least a year. And I think the most likely scenario is annual revaccinations, but we don't know really. We need to wait and see the data.
Oh, yeah, we need to know.
Well,
Annual vaccines.
if we look at the data for the current booster that's on the market that was released around late October, early November, right? Had BA4, BA5. It was a bivalent booster and was effective for maybe 2.5 months. And now we have XBB.
Well, no, that's what they told us.
1.5. Right. But we're looking at now, because the way that they formulate the flu shot is by an algorithm of what strains of the flu will be popular in the upcoming flu season. They don't really know. They just kind of have an idea based on where the winter has rolled throughout the globe.
Right.
And they surmise which 9 or 10 strains to put in the flu vaccine, and then hope that they've guessed right, that those are the ones that we, the public, are exposed to. But they never completely know. And so we see now how they're doing this with the COVID vaccine. They surmised that BA4, BA5 would be popular, which it was before the COVID vaccine, the bivalent booster was rolled out. And then it only really overlapped that wave by maybe 6 weeks, because now we're on to XBB 0.1.5. And so you have, a 2-month window to have been inoculized for what is actually out there at the rate that COVID is mutating?
This is the brilliance of this virus, right? That it's going to mutate so much that we can just continue every year to provide you with a solution with a new vaccine and make billions of dollars off of it. It's almost as if it was, created this way.
Yeah,
and they were also talking about how you'd have to take is it Plovaxit or whatever the other pill that they came out with, that you take that daily is probably the plan. That's a daily pill, and then an annual booster to go with that pill.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, just load them up. So every morning with your vitamins, your Flintstone vitamins, just load them up.
Okay.
Yep. Do people still eat Flintstone vitamins?
I don't know. I haven't seen them in years.
I mean, that's what they should do. Just convert the Flintstone vitamins into like the Pfizer vitamins.
Yeah. Remember the jingle?
Maybe they already have.
10 million strong and growing. We're Flintstone kids.
Yep.
Filled with sugar.
Kids still know who the Flintstones are?
I wonder.
I don't think kids still know who the Flintstones are, do they?
I actually bought the season pass of like the first season of it just to show my kids like a few years ago. I put it on like in the morning while they were, having breakfast, and they're like, "What is this, Daddy? What is this? What is this ancient show?" Meanwhile, they're trying to rewrite history on this whole thing. So this is amazing because the FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee member, Dr. Paul Offit, who is out there pushing vaccine mandates and vaccines for all age groups. Now, he's a FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee member, the very people that are meeting on Thursday to decide what to do and put, it's going to be interesting to see how they roll this into schools. That's the other big question, right? How they make this as part of an annual procedure for children as part of a dose. And I'm telling you, it's coming. We already know that's coming. So he's now, Paul Offit from the FDA is now walking back the CDC's, hey, get a needle in every arm, right? That was the plan, get a needle in every arm. He's now saying the opposite of what they said and what he said just a few short months ago. Watch.
I think we created this unreal expectation that this vaccine can protect against mild disease. That's not true.
You mentioned that certain groups, right? They should definitely go for this vaccine, but it was marketed and it was pushed to everyone. Why?
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that the CDC's own data, or the UK data, or the Canadian data, or the Israeli data show that really only certain groups benefit in terms of protection against severe disease. You can't. Therefore, I think those groups should be targeted. So I'm not sure why the CDC pushed forward with this.
So basically, I was asking you about, does this information, the fact that you're saying the group 65 and older, then there's this new report that that particular group could also have a stroke once they've had that shot within a matter of so many weeks. Do you think that this is leading to vaccine hesitancy, which is something we've been fighting from the beginning?
I don't think it's creating more vaccine hesitancy. I think we already have a fairly healthy amount of vaccine hesitancy as it stands. I really wish that the CDC had really focused on those groups most likely to benefit, meaning the high risk groups, and not tried to push this booster vaccine for everybody, because people have basically rejected it. I think the uptake has only been about 15% of those who are recommended. Hopefully that 15% are the high risk groups, but I think we have vaccine hesitancy anyway. I don't think this business about whether the vaccine caused strokes in the elderly increased hesitancy. I think we're already pretty high level of hesitancy as it stands.
Yeah, you're full of crap. You're full of crap because you're upset that the CDC was pushing it for all age groups and should have really been zeroing in on just the population that needed it, just the people who were had comorbidities and were the population that was going to be hurt by this. Really? You specifically were calling for that. You were telling everyone to do that. We have the videotape in 2021 where here you are praising vaccine mandates across the board and downplaying adverse events and pushing it for all age groups. You were calling for this. Watch.
So you have an enormous safety record on which to stand, an enormous efficacy record on which to stand. I mean, even very, very rare side effects like myocardial inflammation, which occurs maybe in as frequently as 1 in 20,000 people, or clotting associated with the J&J vaccine, which is close to about 1 in 500,000 people. It's not to get a vaccine. It's not a risk-free choice. It's just a choice to take a different and more serious risk. So I think people should be have been reassured by all of the data that we had before there ever was a full approval. But now that there's a full approval, hopefully there will be some people who will feel better about getting this vaccine. And I think also importantly, there are now a number of institutions and private groups in the private sector that are now more comfortable mandating the vaccine.
Okay, it was not a full approval; it was an emergency approval.
Yeah.
Okay, but
that's where's the full approval?
Yeah, that's a misleading thing to say.
We'll come back to your second point, but Thomas Massie agrees with both of you here on this. Congressman Thomas Massie, he just tweeted this today on this very point, and he's like, wait a second. Did I not send this? Has anyone seen an FDA-approved, properly labeled COVID vaccine in the United States yet? If so, please post a picture of the label and post the name and location of the provider. Has anyone seen an FDA-approved, properly labeled COVID? Because it doesn't exist.
Right.
They haven't been approved. So go ahead, your second point.
Well, Paul Offit is the person who CNN has been scrubbing from their website since he told Erica Hill that he did not think everyone needed a booster in the fall. So he's been walking this back since this new bivalent booster, where he was like, wait a minute, I don't know that I signed up for this. I spoke out in favor of the first few vaccines. But he's been saying this for a long time. And the mainstream media has been, sticking its head in the sand. They probably need a chiropractor by this point for how much they're trying to not let him speak now.
Yeah. So again, but this is what the FDA is going to do. So on Thursday, they're going to do this. They're also going to change the rules around the COVID vaccines. We covered this in the newsletter a little bit this morning, allowing people to skip the original 2-shot vaccination process. So, the first 2 Pfizer shots you needed to get or Moderna shots, you don't have to do those anymore. They're just saying they're going to skip right to the boosters.
Yeah.
What? We were told, how often were we told that you need to get the whole dose, that you need to get those? You got to make sure you're fully vaccinated and boosted. Fauci told us repeatedly. The head of the CDC told us repeatedly, you've got to get your main shot and then you got to get boosted.
Right.
You can't now we're just skipping and we're just skipping to the boosters.
Just do whatever. Just take some shit.
Just put whatever you want in your body. They're making it up as they go along. But let me ask you this in the chat. Do you guys trust the CDC? Do you guys trust the people at the FDA I mean, these are the same people that came up with the food pyramid.
Right. And I just don't understand what difference this will make, because who is the person? I would love to interview that person. Who's the person who's like, I didn't get the original COVID vaccine. I didn't like the idea of that. But sure, I'll take this booster. I'll go straight to it now that I don't have to take the first 2. I don't understand that archetype of someone who's going to jump straight to a booster given all the opportunities they had for the original COVID vaccine and doesn't want to.
Maybe they're hoping that the other one was way too many. And now they can skip all that. They can just go
and I'll
the
just
shortcut.
get the one.
Yeah.
I guess, but a vaccine researcher at Mayo Clinic told NPR, the public is voting with their arms, if you will. And they're saying, no, this doesn't make sense to us. So people are not rolling up their sleeves, if you will.
Well, coming up in just a minute, we're going to...
Can you get the COVID vaccine in your butt? I don't think you... I wonder, do they give it to children in their butt cheeks? Because babies don't get vaccines here. I wonder if anybody knows, if any infant...
Anytime I've seen them get vaccines, it's been in their top of their leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where babies usually get in their legs. So
that's where I'd tell them to stick it. Yeah, where the sun don't shine.
In their legs. Yeah. I'm curious.
Coming up in a moment, we're going to be speaking with Dan Cohen, who's done an investigative piece. Now, is the person who's going to replace Dr. Fauci, has that person been identified? We're going to show you another doctor who presumably is on the short list to take over for Dr. Fauci, and it is frightening stuff. So we're going to talk to Dan Cohen in this investigative piece for Redacted on a doctor that I'm not going to reveal his name just yet, but we will deep dive this, and it is some scary, scary stuff. But first...
Well, it's no secret that if you're tuned in, then you know that experts are predicting a recession ahead. Layoffs are already happening by the thousands, and the government is ready to print more money, of course, as we hit the debt ceiling this week, further devaluing the U.S. dollar. While last year was terrible for most investors, 2023 may be even worse, you guys. The That is, unless you were smart and invested in gold, because gold prices are through the roof, then you protected the loss while other investments fell. If the experts were right and we do get hit with a recession, 2023 is looking even better for gold and silver investors. If you're interested in investing in gold, then Lear will help you start purchasing precious metals or converting part of your IRA or 401k into a gold and silver IRA. Just call Lear Capital today at 800-613-3557 or go to learredacted.com. That's Lear redacted.com. There are a lot of gold companies to choose from, and Lear Capital has over 25 years of experience, thousands of 5-star reviews, and a risk-free guarantee that gives you 24 hours to review your purchase before committing it. Lear Capital is a top choice when buying gold and silver. So again, call 800-613-3557 or go to learredacted.com. Get your free gold and silver investor guides and receive up to $15,000 in free bonus metals with your qualified purchase. Again, that's learredacted.com.
Well, Dr. Fauci is gone. He's officially retired. He was the longest serving member of the United States government. He's gone as of the end of the year. So who is going to replace him? Well, that is an interesting question. One possible candidate is a doctor by the name of Peter Hotez. You might have seen some of his outrageous statements over the past few years, demonizing those people who are unvaccinated. He's been knee-deep in the biopharmaceutical complex for years. His name has surfaced as a possible replacement for Dr. Fauci. Although he's downplaying this, nonetheless, the deep state works in mysterious ways. Dan Cohen has just done a deep dive, a 2-part investigation into this controversial man, and Dan joins us on the show. Welcome back to the show, Dan. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Clayton.
So tell us about this guy. Who is Peter Hotez?
Well, Clayton, Peter Hotez has been in the news media on pretty much a daily basis throughout the COVID era, whether he's demonizing the unvaccinated or advocating mass vaccination of untested pharmaceutical products. And he's portrayed as this kind of heroic figure who's embattled by this powerful anti-vax lobby. And so I wanted to see who really is Peter Hotez, who's behind him, what's he actually about, because, you know, he may be an even more powerful figure in the near future. So I did a deep dive into his background, into his history, examined his statements, and what I found is shocking. So let's watch the first part of my investigation into Peter Hotez. Throughout the COVID era, few, if any, personalities have appeared on television more than Dr. Peter Hotez.
Dr. Hotez, welcome to the show. Dr. Hotez, thank you so much for taking the time.
Dr. Hotez, welcome back to the NewsHour.
He has forcefully advocated the most authoritarian and destructive measures, from lockdowns.
We may have to go through that full lockdown. Intensify social distancing control. Social isolation, absolutely mandatory.
Mask mandates.
Too many people are defiant of masks.
And most of all, to inject all of humanity with experimental pharmaceutical products.
Vaccine mandates. Every kid over the age of 12, not only we're going to fully vaccinate the American people, but vaccinate the planet, vaccinate the entire world. You have to aggressively vaccinate. There's no real option here. Vaccinate the Southern Hemisphere. Vaccinate the African continent, South Asia, and Latin America. We're looking at up to 8-9 billion doses. Let's go vaccinate the African people. The security of the country depends on getting everybody vaccinated.
Hotez has received countless honors and awards, from local restaurants to the American Medical Association and the city of Houston, where he now resides.
Hereby proudly proclaim this day, November 25th, 2021, as Dr. Peter Hotez Day in the city of Houston.
He is even nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. As this investigation will reveal, Peter Hotez has spent decades cozying up to powerful interests in the pharmaceutical industry, billionaire foundations, and the U.S. government. He has treated the world as a laboratory, exploiting every opportunity to undermine regulation and test new drugs on unsuspecting populations, precisely the opposite of the image of public health servant that he projects. In 1989, Hotez's first postdoctoral award was from Pfizer, along with $100,000. This allowed him to continue experiments for a human hookworm vaccine that he had begun years earlier, a project that to this day has not succeeded.
Mr. Hotez has been deeply embedded in the pharmaceutical industry since the very earliest stage in his career.
In 2003, he was a Pfizer visiting professor in tropical diseases at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. The same year, he began work on a coronavirus vaccine, but shelved the project after the SARS virus flamed out and he could not find funding. Hotez's career has largely been devoted to development of drugs to test on underdeveloped and hyper-exploited countries in Latin America, South Asia, and Africa. He owes much of his success to three figures: Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, and Bill Clinton. In 1996, Fauci approved a $2.9 million NIAID grant for Hotez to study tropical diseases, carrying on a program that began in the Rockefeller Foundation, notorious for its funding a century earlier of the eugenics movements in the United States and Nazi Germany. Hotez would later coin these maladies neglected tropical diseases. He would sometimes describe them as anti-poverty vaccines. But most of these diseases exist because of poverty. Hotez himself has admitted as much.
You know, we call them tropical diseases. It's a bit of a misnomer. They're diseases of poverty. Poverty is the overriding determinant.
The CDC explains that several of the neglected tropical diseases can be controlled or even eliminated, and improving basic water, sanitation, and hygiene are highly effective strategies.
If you really worry about neglected tropical diseases, then you're really worried about sanitation, because sanitation is the primary reason why we've had an increase in lifespan over the past 150 years. It's the number one reason. It's 90% of the answer. So antibiotics and all these other things have had no role, vaccines, compared to sanitation.
Rather than address root causes, Hotez has spawned a neglected tropical disease industrial complex dependent on the perpetual poverty that he claims his pharmaceutical products combat. In 2000, with $18 million from the Gates Foundation, he founded his own department in George Washington University and, now heading the prestigious Sabin Institute, started the Human Hookworm Vaccine Initiative to continue its development.
One of the foundation's key partners is Professor Peter Hotez, who's doing inspiring work on tropical diseases, and we're very excited about being able to back some breakthroughs there and have a huge impact.
Hotez wrote in 2004, "With funding from the Gates Foundation, I believe that we can have in hand over the next decade vaccines for malaria, dengue, and hookworm." At the 2006 Clinton Global Initiative, the Sabin Institute launched its global network for tropical neglected diseases.
Clinton decided that these neglected tropical diseases needed attention. So it was actually, CGI has been incredibly important in the development of this organization to give it the attention it needs. And as a result of CGI, we've been able to now attract some large-scale donors.
U.S. government money quickly began to pour in.
A $350 million initiative to target neglected tropical diseases.
When Hillary Clinton took over the State Department in 2009, USAID's annual neglected tropical disease budget nearly tripled.
We are the global leader in the fight against neglected tropical diseases. From the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has given billions to revive immunization campaigns and discover new vaccines, to the Clinton Foundation.
From 2006 to 2021, the agency spent $1.1 billion, and pharmaceutical companies gave $28.6 billion worth of drugs to administer.
When it comes to fighting neglected tropical diseases, the commitment of the pharmaceutical industry starts at the highest levels of leadership.
For Hotez, these diseases and conditions are mere pretext to develop and deliver drugs. After a 2010 cholera outbreak in Haiti, Hotez remarked, "This is an opportunity to really think about ways to use the vaccine." Hotez has been a member and regular guest at subsequent Clinton Global Initiatives, appealing for money to develop more drugs.
I'm back this year talking about the need for the fact that we need innovation to make a new round of medicines and vaccines.
In 2014, President Obama named Hotez as U.S. science envoy to implement what he called vaccine diplomacy in the Middle East and North Africa. Hotez wrote that vaccine science diplomacy could also lead to the development and testing of some highly innovative neglected disease vaccines, and that poor populations have rights to biomedical innovation. In September 2014, Ebola virus in West Africa provided this opportunity.
Ebola fears throughout the country. Experts now warning of the unavoidable spread of the virus in Europe. And what happened to that vaccine for Ebola?
The Obama administration deployed 3,000 troops to Liberia.
We're going to establish a military command center in Liberia to support civilian efforts across the region, similar to our response after the Haiti earthquake.
For Anthony Fauci and Peter Hotez, it was a golden opportunity.
I am so excited to know that President Obama sent in 3,000 troops to create some semblance of a healthcare infrastructure. It makes it possible now to introduce these new products.
Something I'm very excited about, it's now going to create a mechanism to bring in new interventions, new drugs, new vaccines that you couldn't bring in otherwise in a very chaotic situation.
We're going to start a very much expanded clinical trial in West Africa, likely in Liberia.
Obama sought $6 billion to support these efforts.
Our scientists continue their urgent research in the hope of finding new treatments and perhaps vaccines. And today I'm calling on Congress to approve the funding that we've requested.
While the government, pharmaceutical companies, and their functionaries sought to conduct medical experiments, one bioethicist spoke out.
These drugs have never been tested in humans. Therefore, the dangerous and adverse effects can neither be known nor safely predicted. It's entirely possible they may be ineffective or even harmful. What has been done here is not research, but rather it is scary experimental treatment. Some of these misadventures occurred on the African continent, leading to a pervasive distrust of Western drug companies using Africans as their experimental guinea pigs. The stark reality is that pharmaceutical companies are a business, and the business has to have a market.
Though Ebola eventually subsided without any vaccines, Hotez and the Sabin Institute have continued developing them along with other products. In September 2022, he attempted to again rebrand his experimental pharmaceutical products, this time as malnutrition vaccines, claiming that approval processes could be accelerated to help avert an imminent food catastrophe or even potential mass starvation events. We must begin this process imminently. To date, Hotez has received $4.2 million from Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim's foundation, $9.6 million from Fauci's NIAID, and $44 million from the Gates Foundation. He continues to maintain close relationships with pharmaceutical giants like Pfizer and Eli Lilly. Hotez's Sabin Institute is now at Baylor University in Houston, Texas, flush with funding from the Gates Foundation, despite having never succeeded in developing a working vaccine. In the era of COVID-19, Hotez would become one of the most aggressive ideologues of the emergent biomedical security regime, demanding questioning be censored and criticism criminalized.
Wow, Dan, some shocking stuff with this guy. Most people have no idea about this. I'm sure most people have zero idea of his history. Really shocking. What stood out to you? I mean, when you started on this path, what was the most shocking thing that you discovered with this guy?
Well, seeing how excited Hotez was to basically use, as that bioethicist we saw, what he described as experiments on the third world, on global South countries, basically taking little African and Latin American kids and injecting them with products to see what happens. I mean, it harkens back to the darkest times of medicine, and I think someone like Hotez, that's what he really encapsulates. With and also the emergent how the biopharmaceutical complex and the military-industrial complex are completely the same. We saw that Hotez was so excited that Obama sent troops to West Africa because that would allow this mass vaccination campaign, which of course didn't work. And so, that can't happen without the military. And so it's, using the global South as a testing ground for pharmaceutical products. And that's been going on for decades with all kinds of horrible results. So I think that's the most shocking aspect for me.
And we should point out that being able to do this research, this investigation, thanks in part to the Vaccine Safety Research Foundation, right?
Yeah, Vaccine Research Safety Foundation supported my work in this investigation. They've been great. I've done other work for them with them before. They helped put on the Defeat the Mandates rally here in Washington, D.C. Last year, and that was excellent. So they're doing really good work. Everyone should check out their Rumble, Vaccine Research Safety Foundation, and their site, and give them a follow and watch their content.
Can you give us a preview? We've got part 2 we're going to air tomorrow night here on the show. Can you give us a preview of your investigation and what we can expect in part 2 of your investigation?
Well, after basically establishing how Peter Hotez and the biopharmaceutical complex test their products on people, then part 2 examines the COVID era. What has Peter Hotez done in the COVID era? And he has basically acted as a hammer that sees everything as a nail, where all he wants to do is vaccinate, 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 and he will lie and cross himself and manipulate and contradict every prior statement he's made in order to advance that. And so I spent a sickening amount of hours going through just archival footage, watching his statements, and I only used really a fraction of them to basically show that this man, Peter Hotez, should be totally discredited, should not be up for any kind of position in the government, whatever that is, or what he's doing now. So I'm really excited for people to see part 2.
Although discredited people seem to make up a great foundation of the federal government and the Biden administration. Dan Cohen, great to see you. We'll see you back here tomorrow for part 2 of your investigation into Peter Hotez. Thanks so much for joining us, Dan.
Thanks a lot, Clayton.
He really is the perfect guy. He really is the perfect guy to be a part. I mean, here you go.
Boy, that was a feel-good piece.
I mean, think about it.
I'm excited about it.
But this is you're not going to see this in mainstream media at all, like this coverage at all. And so you saw Dan's piece. You saw all of the fawning. You saw the Daily Show. I mean, CBS, all of these networks fawning over this guy. He gets the key to the city.
Yeah.
They give him and this is unbelievable. And so when you understand, like, these are the people that get elevated to these positions where Dr. Fauci was, we need to make sure that these people don't reach these positions. And the way that we do that is with information. Information is power. And if you can share this out in your community, just like share this video, share it out to a family, friend, local representative, House of Representatives, make sure that they know absolutely under no circumstances should a guy like this be in charge of our health policy in the United States of America.
It's the equivalent of going like, oh, we've had Jeffrey Dahmer for the past 8 years, and now we're moving to Ted Bundy because he's just so much,
Yeah.
Right.
And now that we know how much power that position wields, where most of us were happily ignorant about Dr. Fauci before 2019, yes, it's good to pay attention to who sits in that seat.
So tomorrow night,
that Game of Thrones chair.
Right. So tomorrow night, be sure to join us for part 2. Dan's going to be joining us for the second part of that. We're going to look at Dr. Hotez's COVID era, so you don't want to miss that. We've got more news to get to here on this Tuesday. And thank you all for subscribing to the channel and being able to support independent journalism here. We're self-funded here. We don't have any billionaires. We don't have any Bill Gateses funding what we do here. We don't have any Pfizers supporting us. It's you, when you subscribe, when you watch our show and you share it out and you press that like button, that's how you're able to support us. So thank you so much for being able to do that. And we really, really appreciate it. We got more news too. We're going to talk about Mexico being fed up with the United States over this GMO policy. We're also going to look at the U.S. schools right now in total decline, and people are running, try to go to private schools and homeschooling because of the indoctrination of what's been happening at U.S. schools. It's a disaster. And we're also going to look at Iran as well. We've got a special journalist and scholar specifically on that topic coming up in just a little bit later. But first, let me tell you about our friends over at Nugenics, because Guys, if you feel like, hey, you got the dad bod, it's harder to stay in shape. Maybe, how many of you, just be honest with me, let me know in the chat how many of you have already given up on your New Year's resolutions. It's hard, right? Because it's cold and all of that motivation at the New Year's, it's kind of hard, right? Well, now we you need that little boost, and that's where Nugenix Total T comes in. They're offering a complimentary bottle when you text the numbers 231-231 and enter the keyword redacted. So here's the thing. If you're getting older, it's changing your body. Maybe get a little bit of the dad bod going on. You're feeling a little less like your old self. You don't have the time to work out, but you want the energy and the body that you once had. Well, Nugenix is the way to help you get there. Push you over that speed bump, so to speak. Makes you feel revived, and you can start working out like you used to. And again, this is the beauty of it. If you want more energy to counter the negative physical effects of aging, that's where Nugenix Total T Testosterone Booster with Testofen comes in. It'll help you turn back the clock, re-energize your workouts, get you better results at the gym. And look, Nugenix has been sponsoring our show now for about a year. They believe in independent journalism. They believe in what we do, and they've seen great success with our audience. Guys who are wanting that little kick and little push to right now to get that man boosting key ingredient and get going. They have the essential free and total testosterone levels that the aging process robs you of. So you're going to feel stronger, leaner, with more energy and drive. That's where Nugenix Total T, it helps boost all of those things that are missing. You find more passion too. Your partner will notice the difference. Nugenix Total T is the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. It can help re-energize your life, help you get back in the powerful, confident, good-looking warrior state that you used to be. So here's what you do. Now get a complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T when you text 231-231. Enter the keyword redacted. You text now and you get a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, which is their most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get back into shape fast. Absolutely free. Text 231-231 to get those free bottles. Enter the word redacted. Text 231-231 and enter the keyword redacted. And when by the way, I should mention, texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply. I think we all know that, right? Well, I think when you text these days, they have to say that for a disclaimer, but I think we all know now when you text, data rates may apply. But,
yes.
Who has data rates anymore?
I don't know.
I don't even think that's a thing.
Everyone's got like unlimited.
Like everything's
data.
unlimited talk and text these days.
I know.
Yeah.
Who has data rates? It's like 1995.
Yeah, who's
but
paying for
not my
text?
internet.
No,
not my internet. I hit my cap. Today for
What?
my 100% cap because they like to charge me extra. Well, I mean, because we do like the 4K video files and stuff like that. So if my daughter watches YouTube at all, then I hit my cap usually about 10 days before the end of the month. So.
Wow.
You know, it's $25
for your home
per month to
internet,
get
they
rid of
have
that
a cap.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
Yeah, I have a cap. It's a high cap, but I go through a lot of data.
Wow.
I go through a lot of data.
We've had unlimited. We have to with this show because we're streaming in 4K on this channel. There's no way, and we would have to unlimited.
Yeah, Clayton has our ISP, like the cable guy who comes out on his cell phone, like on speed dial.
My speed dial. So I can't have any problems here.
Joao, you need to come back.
Yeah.
I need a dedicated line. All right, let's talk about Mexico, because Mexico keeps pissing off the U.S. by trying to govern their own country.
Wow.
And the U.S. no le gusta. We are actually going to talk about the price of corn today, and the price of tortillas is applicable to this story because the United States is warning Mexico, if you go through with this law, which I'm going to tell you about in a second, your tortillas are going to get more expensive. And so you better think this through, which I love that we're talking about that on Taco Tuesday.
Right.
Because
we just had tortillas tonight, actually.
We did, actually, from my Mexican brother-in-law who made them.
Yeah.
Not with GMO corn from the United States, though. Okay, this week, the U.S. Foreign Agriculture Service said that it has grave concerns about Mexico implementing an upcoming law that prohibits GMO corn, that's genetically modified corn. The U.S. is saying you can't do this, and it's not based on science. Here is the statement from the Foreign Agriculture Service. And I'm going to read you a little excerpt because I know that's a terrible clip. I just want to show you the statement. Now, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador put in place a law that will prohibit his country from buying GMOs by 2024. And as a result of this meeting in Mexico City between the Department of Agriculture and officials in Mexico, Mexico did agree to move this deadline to 2025. They offered that as an option, but they did still say we're going to implement. They didn't actually formally agree to 2025. That was a compromise. The U.S. says no. Here's what the statement says. It says Mexico's approach, which is not grounded in science, still threatens to disrupt billions of dollars in bilateral agricultural trade, cause serious harm to U.S. farmers and Mexican livestock producers, and stifle important innovations needed to help producers respond to pressing climate and food security challenges. Now, this not based in science bit is interesting because, the government doesn't really have a monopoly on based in science regulations since the pandemic. I don't think they can use that one for a while. Like, they need a timeout on saying that they're basing policies in science because they abused the privilege. Now, the ban calls for a phase out of glyphosate. I practiced saying it, glyphosate. Well, there is actually some science about glyphosate from 2008 in a journal called Science of the Total Environment. Here's the journal article presenting concerns that use of this pesticide can be correlated with all types of negative health effects. Let's just pull out the highlights from the article. It can degrade product AMPA. It can accumulate in the environment. Chronic low-dose effects on animals and humans have been documented. Shifts in microbial community composition of soil, plants, and animals' guts resulted. And also, it can lead to antibiotic resistance. And it may serve as one of the main drivers, in fact, of antibiotic resistance. So there actually is some science that if Mexico wants to find alternatives to these pesticides, and, maybe they should be able to do that if they want to. A group called World Perspectives says that this will be really, really bad for food producers and growers. Here's just a summary of what they put out last year. They said it will increase the cost of corn by 19%. The average cost will go up. Prices will rise 48% to $8.14 a bushel. Tortilla prices will rise 16% on average. Poultry production in Mexico will fall. Mexico's GDP will fall by $11.72 billion over 10 years just because of the one product, corn. An annual loss of 56,000 jobs, which will reduce labor income by $2.99 billion. Okay. Well, who paid for this? If you zoom in on the bottom, and I know that you can't really read this, but I just want to point out that it's there. I know. I'm just telling you this is at the bottom, and I'm going to tell you. Let's see who paid for this. Well, the National Association of Agriculture, National Corn Growers Association, Corn Refiners Association. So lobbyist groups, basically U.S. interest and lobbyist groups paid for these numbers. They are saying that it's just unlikely that enough non-GMO corn will be available in international markets by 2024 to meet Mexico's needs, and this will lead to food insecurity and increased prices for many of its staple foods. But that's not what farmers say. In fact, here is from an article today from an organic and non-GMO report from all manner of seed producers saying, we're ready, actually. We have been ready. I have absolutely no doubt that the U.S. could meet Mexico's demand for non-GMO corn, says this one seed producer. All that's needed is market signals, and farmers will do it. Another non-GMO seed provider. If we wanted to do that, the genetics are available. We can. Another guy saying, yeah, there's a $450 million market in corn growing from Nebraska to Mexico. We could fill the non-GMO demand from Nebraska if we had just a little public support. Like, we can do this. We are willing to do this. It looks to me like it's a matter of subsidies. It's just a matter of who has the money to lobby the government to get the subsidies in order to sell the corn. Corn is one of the most, if not the most, subsidized crops in the United States. So here we have an example of the government choosing winners and losers. And they are choosing to lobby on behalf of GMO providers instead of non-GMO providers. Why?
I wonder how much of that money tracks back to Mr. Gates. I saw a diagram the other day that showed Bill Gates in the middle and all the money he has flowing out to all the things, like many of the things we talk about on this show, end up tying back to Bill Gates in some way or another. And is it coincidence that he's buying up all the farmland that he would be involved in this as well?
Oh, no. I mean, taking away independent farms, buying up all of the farmland, and then, of course, all of the government subsidies of these particular farms.
Yes.
And these genetically modified products.
And the patents that Monsanto has on seeds that, prevents certain, prevents non-GMO providers from even competing with them. It absolutely ties down to money. Why the government is lobbying on behalf of GMO products and not non-GMO products when this is what the market is demanding. You can't tell Mexico, you don't want to do this, don't do this, when there are people willing to meet these needs. If they just shifted their subsidies over to non-GMO providers because that's what the market is dictating, that absolutely could happen. Why is it not? Now, another thing worth mentioning is that many European countries outlaw GMO crops. So why are they free to do that and Mexico is not?
Well, it's part of again, we control them, right? The United States controls them. They dictate and tell them what's going to happen in North America, right? Like when we talk about the World Cup coming to North America, like it's the United States, right? It's the United States runs the whole chessboard.
Yeah.
And so we get to tell them whatever we want, just like as you pointed out, and we talked about this before, about oil and gas and our control over that.
Yes.
Oh, they want to privatize. They want to privatize things? No, sorry. You're not going to be allowed to do that because United States gas companies need to make their money in Mexico.
Yes, in fact, we're going to talk about this because the United States is saying that if they go ahead and put this plan in place to reduce pesticides and GMOs, then the United States will have to, quote, take formal steps to enforce our rights under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. Well, this is the same agreement that they are using to push Mexico to open up their borders to U.S. gas companies. We reported this just last summer. The U.S. is telling Mexico, knock off this state-controlled gas program you've got because we can't compete. We can't get in there with U.S., they're anti-competitive. It's not allowing U.S. gas companies to get in there and raise prices because Mexico has actually had, compared to the United States, relatively stable gas prices as of late. And we can't have that. It's embarrassing when your neighbor is doing okay without sanctions and we're not, and because they have privatized gas. So now the United States is saying they're going to use this same agreement to get in there and make sure that Mexico allows the United States to pervert prices of oil and gas inside. So again, this is the government choosing to work on behalf of big business, in this case, oil and gas, or in the previous case, genetically modified corn. Perhaps, and I'm going to say perhaps they're working harder for big business than they are for their constituents.
Of course they are. And
Mexico better be careful because they'll end up another Puerto Rico or Hawaii if they don't play ball. We'll just take over the country.
Worse to me is the risk of ending up like India, where you end up where Monsanto got so entrenched in their agriculture that they basically had GMO modified grains that would not reseed. And so then the farmers had to buy brand new seed every single season, and they couldn't afford it. So they were the farmers actually started drinking the Monsanto pesticide that was required for their crops as a suicide protest.
Oh my God. Did that happen? I didn't know about this.
Oh yeah, no, that's been going on for years, actually.
What,
and it's
what
crazy.
do you mean by won't reseed?
They're created so that they won't reseed them. Like you can't then take remember how we in our garden here will take
we dry out the corn.
We dry out the corn and then we replant and then we replant that corn, right? You can't do that with these seeds. They just won't do that. So you're reliant on them to give you the seeds for next season.
So they produce infertile crops?
Yes.
That's crazy and disgusting.
And there's court cases. If you look on YouTube, there are open court cases where there are people saving seeds and Monsanto is like going after them for saving seeds.
Yes.
I mean, it's unbelievable how much of our farming Monsanto controls.
Oh, when I lived in Montana, the ranchers had this problem, of course, because the seeds would blow across ranches, across highways. They had no control of it. And then they would go around, like the seed police would go and they'd find their Monsanto seeds on their ranches, but they didn't plant them because they had simply blown there. Didn't matter. So they would be fined as a result of it, and they'd be sued as a result of it. Like, you're using our corn, our seed that or not corn in Montana, but our seeds that you didn't pay for, are like our Roundup protected seeds or whatever that you didn't pay for, that are growing on your land, and they're able to like spot them, genetically spot them, and know exactly which is a Monsanto seed. It's really, really crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is just, it's so interesting, right? When other countries will make, decisions that they think are good on behalf of their people. And then the United States is saying, you can't do that if it's bad for us.
Jirwa Swam says, yes, Natalie, you act like you're saving the planet. Why would you not know this? Know what? Well, you know about Monsanto.
How have I acted like I'm saving the planet? I don't know.
I don't know what she means, what he or she means by that.
She changed her watch.
It's because she's wearing green, so she must resemble Captain Planet. And I think that's the connection.
Okay.
Is that
Captain Planet.
I mean, I'm doing my part here, but I don't know everything.
We apologize for not knowing every story in existence. We will try, though. But every nuance of every story, we work hard on it.
I think people sometimes forget that they went down a path of knowledge as well. They didn't always know. It's like, you got to allow people their own.
No. Jay Swaram in our chat was born with all that knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Like was born like that, like omnipotent, has all this power.
Okay.
It's just something. It's just something I've been following for a long time, because I was like, when I first went to university way back in my early 20s, I was actually a environmental chemistry major, and soil science was one of my like things I was really interested in. And I remember hearing back then there were scientists working on GMO crops as a way of increasing yield.
Yes.
And so like I've been following this whole progression of them like working on it to increase yield, to kind of like combat world hunger, and then how Monsanto kind of like figured out a little bit too much, and then that like watching this whole progression of what happened with that idea of saving like ending world hunger to maximizing Monsanto profit. And just the repercussions of it. So it's something I've been paying attention to for a long time, because it's something that I've been interested in for a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting. So then what is your take on these non-GMO producers who are saying, we're ready, send me in, coach? Like, do you think that that's a viable option?
I mean, I guess as far as, I'm not sure, maybe I understand the question. The non-GMO in Mexico?
No, these American farmers in Nebraska, in where are they? Minnesota, who are saying, we're ready though. If Mexico actually implements this, we actually can make the seed.
Right, because we have the seeds. They're not Monsanto-based seeds.
I think it's just a lot like the egg thing. It's like the wrong people are getting blamed for the egg problem too. They can produce the eggs. They have the chickens. They have everything that it takes, but there's something that's failing somewhere else. So it's kind of the same thing. We have farmers at the ready to bring us food. It's just that they're not selecting the right farmers. They're subsidizing the wrong farmers to get us crap food instead of the good farmers and chicken producers, meat producers and things to get us good food.
Yeah, and I read somewhere once, I can't remember now where I read this, but corn is one of the few crops that actually needs intervention from
humans. It can't grow on its own.
Birds or humans, because because its seeds are protected, and so we have to actually open it. It needs mammals or birds or what have you to open it up and propagate it. So it's possible that you do need more labor in order to propagate corn as a crop. And there are two different types of corns that we're talking about. There's yellow corn, which I think is for animals, and white corn, which is for cooking and humans. And so it's a matter of like which producers are ready to produce non-GMO versions of both.
That's right. Well, we've got more news to get to here on this Tuesday. We're going to talk about the schools in the United States collapsing. And for that, we're going to move over to Rumble in just a moment. So make sure that you're dialed up on our Rumble channel, which is rumble.com/redacted. There are going to be some things we can't talk about on YouTube in that story, I don't think. So we'll move over there. That's a censorship-free platform. We're also going to talk about Iran and how the West wants to topple that government. And they're doing it through a massive coordinated information war. We're going to show you the insides of that from a scholar, a PhD, living in Tehran, a journalist who's been covering this story. She's going to be joining us in just a few minutes to tell you about that story. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Moomoo, because right now you can trade like a pro. You can get up to 15 free stocks, and you're entered in for a chance to get up to even more additional bonuses right now. You can get 15 free stocks valued up to $30,000 just for opening an account and making your initial deposits in the account. Again, you're not spending any money. You're just putting into your account to activate it. And then you can do nothing with this account. You'd have your money in there plus the 15 free stocks and let them grow. The market is rebounding. We saw some pretty big surges in different quadrants over the past few weeks here. So it's interesting to watch the market right now. We're kind of keeping our eyes on what the Federal Reserve is going to do, but the Hong Kong Stock Exchange exploding. Of course, watching commodity stocks, your gold producers, your silver producers, your energy sector, your commodities are all taking off right now because this could be the year of the commodity. And the commodity stuff, those are the things that I'm investing in. Moomoo just added a new earnings season calendar, so you can track the top number of 20 big companies and see when the earnings season happens for them. So it's right on the calendar that's built inside the Moomoo application, which is great. Normally you'd have to hunt and peck to find out, hey, when is Tesla announcing earnings? When is this company announcing earnings? And now it's all built right inside the trading app for Moomoo. Moomoo is a great trading platform with over 19 million users worldwide. They are a multi-billion-dollar company. So again, check them out, and you can get these 15 free stocks by going to redacted.inc/Moomoo. Again, that's redacted.inc/Moomoo to get those 15 free stocks. We have the links in the description below. So if you're driving or anything, you want to check it out later, that is in the description below. So check it out.
All right. Well, why, you ask, are parents in the U.S. afraid to send their children to school? And will the U.S. and various states allow parents the option not to, because it's a mess there? We're going to talk about that on Rumble. We're going to show you some things that, aren't necessarily allowed on certain platforms, but we can show you on Rumble. So we are going to say goodbye now to those of you joining us on YouTube. Thank you so much. If you want to stay with us, and we hope that you do, click the link or go to rumble.com/redacted. Before you leave YouTube, maybe give us a thumbs up. We accept thumbs up.
Press the like button. Yeah, subscribe.
And now come on over. So if we're saying goodbye to you, goodbye. See you tomorrow. Those of you on Rumble, we've been here all along. We know that. Get ready. Tuck yourselves in, because we got another story to do.
Yeah, and thank you for subscribing. If you subscribe, your name will pop up here on the big board. So any new subscribers, your name will pop right up here. Please smash that like button, and also on Rumble. I think how it works, David, what is it? You press the plus button. Yeah, give us a plus there. And also we have a community. So if you click that big red join button that's right there on Rumble, you can join our private community. So we've got you can join the Rebellion. You can become a Rebel VIP and join our Redacted Rebellion. Get access to exclusive content. Support what we do for the price of a cup of coffee once a month. You just click that join button, and for like $1.99 or a few bucks or whatever, you can support independent journalism and become a Rebel VIP. You get access to our exclusive content, early video releases, content that we're doing. We have our big Redacted history that we are about to release. We will be releasing it to our community first before anyone else gets to see it. So we're really excited about that. Our new Redacted history documentary is coming out very, very soon. So please subscribe, become part of our Redacted community, redacted.inc. Or if you're on Rumble right now, just click the big red join button, and that's how you can support us.